go. Perfect. So we have with us in Zoom land, we have Ronald Braunstein, the musical director, and I know why that's. There we go. That's Zoom world for us. Mute when it's their chance to speak. We could give that a try. So unmute me. I'm wondering if you guys can mute yourselves. If you can mute yourselves. We may need, can you hear me without the microphone? But they can't hear me. I'm wired in through the computer. There, no feedback. Can you hear me? You can hear me. Perfect. All right. Thank you to Jerry, our sound tech. I'm not going to go into long introductions because we want as much time as possible with our guests. We have Ronald Braunstein, who is the musical director and conductor of the Me Too Orchestra. We have Caroline Whiddon, the executive director of Me Too Orchestra. Sandy Bartlett, who plays the flute in the Me Too, for Me Too Boston. And we have Margie Friedman and Barbara Multer-Wellin, the executive producers and directors of the film. So welcome. We are going to start with a few questions here. Firstly, to you, Ronald. First, wonderful, wonderful and inspiring story. Thank you so much. You're the reason that Me Too exists. Can you please tell us something, anything additional about your background and career and your career path and how it led you to create the Me Too Orchestra?
Well, it's interesting. You saw from the film how I got, I went to Juilliard and won famous competitions. I was conducting all over the place, and everything going really, really well until mental health entered my life, or actually left my life. And when I started getting mentally ill, my personality started to become unstable, and my winning streaks were constantly derailed by my illness. So after trying to navigate the ups and downs of the illness, finally at the age of 66, I was fired from a job because of my mental illness. Actually, I was fired from the job because of their mental illness stigma. So, you have no idea how bad it feels to be fired because of mental health stigma. So after that happened, I didn't want to go back into the traditional music world. So because I would just be discriminated against again. So I decided to create an orchestra of people like me who understood what it was like to live with a mental illness. So I had no choice.
Thank you. First, I guess I should have introduced myself in person. We've communicated through a few group emails, but I'm Al Benarroch. I'm the executive director here at Jewish Child and Family Service. We have about, I'm going to say about 25 or 30 people in our audience. We've had a bit of snow this evening, so I think it made it a little challenging as we introduced ourselves further to Winnipeg winter. And so, so we're really happy for the folks that are here. Our next question for you, Caroline. Roughly half the orchestra consists of people living with a mental illness and half with no diagnosis. Right. Why is it important, and why was it important to make sure that the orchestra was open to everyone?
Yeah, I do think that was a really important decision that we made before we got anything off the ground. We talked about what the orchestra might look like, what the composition would be, and we decided early on that it was important to have a fully inclusive and diverse group of musicians together. And for us, really, the whole point of having people with and without diagnosis, there are kind of two things that were important about that for us. One is that, as Ronald mentioned, he had just been discriminated against, stigmatized on the job. And there had been, I vividly remember someone in that work situation saying to me, "We think this man has a mental illness and we don't know how to work with that." And I thought, maybe there's a chance through this orchestra, if we have people with or without diagnoses working together, that we can, quite vividly demonstrate that this is in fact possible. It's not that big of a challenge. You've just got to want to do it. And then certainly, in order to really erase stigma, you've got to have people involved that maybe don't know that much about mental illness. They may not have a best friend that has said to them, "I have bipolar disorder." They may not have that firsthand experience. And this is our chance to bring them along on our mental health journey, to teach them, to make sure that their idea of what it means to live with bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or addiction isn't purely drawn from what they just saw in a movie or read about in the news. So yeah, I think it was a very important decision made very early on.
Wonderful, thank you. I know that some of the work we do does similar things in terms of bringing people together with diagnoses and no diagnoses. This is at a whole new level. So thank you for that. You also include those individuals recovering from addiction.
Yes.
Why was that important?
Gosh, I think we just knew early on, first of all, that in our minds, that fits the definition of mental illness. I mean, it's all part of people's brains kind of betraying them and sending messages that may not be based in reality or in their best interests. We also know that so many of our colleagues who are living with mental health issues also self-medicate, and that can lead to addiction. So for us, it just made sense. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Sandy, you're up here. Growing up, what difference did music and playing an instrument make in your life?
Music gave me a community. Most of the things that I've been interested in my life have otherwise been pretty introverted activities. I was a reader, I like science, stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time alone, and I was kind of like an awkward child. So being able to play music as part of band, and later on as jazz band, and then now as orchestra, like it's always been kind of a set community for me in which I can go, and I'm actually working with a lot of other people collaboratively, and it sets up a good place for me. And it gave me a lot of support through the years in a way that I don't think I would have had the support otherwise.
Yeah, we highlighted a little bit earlier the importance of community and the isolation, obviously, that mental illness can bring. So Sandy, to you as well, how is being a part of an orchestra where acceptance and understanding are a priority? How has that made a difference for you now?
Currently, it's a safe space where, for when I first started, I was kind of in a place where, or with me too, I was in a place where I was like going through a lot of changes. I was just starting a brand new job. I had been unemployed. I had a hard time finding a job. So I was kind of in a place where I didn't really have such a great view of myself. And being able to be in a place where I could go and play music and work with people where nobody was going to, think badly of me, or I didn't feel like I was going to be in a place where I was going to be, go through a lot of questioning or a lot of trouble to try to fit in. It really helped put me on a great path. Even to this day, it has really helped throughout this time. Like I've had the courage not to just go back to school, but to really place some really high demands on myself in school. Not only to get high grades, but also to take on a really difficult internship, followed by an even more difficult research position at MIT. So it really helped me to have the confidence to be able to really push myself and grow as a person, and not question that I couldn't do it just because maybe this part of me was a little bit different.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, fantastic. Barbara.
Yes.
what did you learn in the process of doing this film?
I think the most important thing that I learned was, having come from a family like so many others that had members who had mental health issues from my very earliest, and having had some myself in terms of depression and anxiety. From my family of origin, it was always very hush-hush. We were not supposed to talk about it. We were, it was kind of a shame. And it was, especially when I was very young, really kind of a secret that was meant to be, kept from the world. So what I think I learned the most, and Sandy, well, all of you really were a big part of this, was that that's the worst possible thing that you can do. That it's much more healing and life affirming to just, this is where I am and this is what I am, and so what, and not to be ashamed. So I've got to say that that's absolutely the most important thing that I learned in doing this, and being around these wonderful people for as long as I got to be around them.
Well, thank you. And Margie, the same question for you.
I think one of the things I learned is that mental illness is not all or nothing. It's not 100% all the time. It can be cyclical. It can be one day or 1 month or whatever it is, you're having a bad time. But then the rest of the time, you're perfectly fine and you function just like everybody else. And so I think that was a very important thing to learn. One of the things I love about this orchestra is that when you look at the orchestra, you don't know who's living with a mental illness. I defy anybody when they go to a concert to figure that out, because they look like your neighbor. They look like your friend. They look like the person you work with, because they are. And so I think that was incredibly important to learn, because so often people with mental health issues, especially in the media, are portrayed in a particular way. And that's just not the way it is. As Caroline said in her interview with the NPR person at the end of the film, more likely people living with a mental illness have families, they have good jobs, they're leading good lives. And so I think that was really an important lesson and something we really wanted to portray in the film.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we often use the terminology, people are not either or, they're both and.
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. Ronald, you have a very special relationship with the musicians. You're a friend, a mentor, sometimes even an advocate. Why is this so important to you?
Well, it's important to me because basically everyone needs friendships and everyone needs mentors. My friendships in Me Too are very important to me. We know all each other, everything very deeply. And then everyone needs a mentor. And sometimes I feel like I'm their mentor, and also I learn a lot from them. Also, I'm kind of a role model for them, because I just never give up. I never give up on myself, and I certainly don't ever give up on others. So that's why it's important to me.
Wonderful, thank you. Caroline, if you could talk a little bit about the steps you've taken to create that stigma-free zone. How can that apply to any group seeking to bring people living with and without diagnoses together?
Sure. We decided early on that we were going to use that phrase stigma-free zone to describe our rehearsal space, our performance spaces. And honestly, I think the most effective thing that we've done is simply to declare it, which seems like a very simple thing to say, but the signage, repeating it over and over again, it reminds people that they're both entering a safe space and entering a space where a certain level of acceptance and support is expected of them. And so our musicians have said that that's very important to them. We've also had audience members speak very positively about that. And, it's not mysterious. If we all kind of just set that expectation of ourselves and others, we can make that work, right? I mean, we have a room full of musicians at every rehearsal coming from all sorts of walks of life, various different playing levels, different age levels. And on many levels, I think it probably shouldn't work in some ways. And yet, because we're all coming together in this stigma-free zone, it does work. We're all there to support each other. And it's easy for me to imagine that happening in other places, in other settings. I don't know why it couldn't be a part of maybe some sports groups. There are other places that seem more obvious, such as physicians' offices or churches that you might think would be, just by virtue of who they are, they might be stigma-free zones, and they aren't necessarily. So I'd love to see some stigma-free zone signage in some new places too. But yeah, we do like to think that it's an attitude, it's a virtue that could be adopted and utilized in other spaces.
Thank you. I think it's going to go up in the waiting room of a certain Jewish family service office here in Winnipeg. That's fantastic.
I love it. Set the expectation. It'll happen.
We like to think and believe that we are a stigma-free zone. I think we got to put it out there and then walk that walk 100%. Thank you.
Well, and Al, we all like to think that. And in Me Too, we make mistakes too. And that's okay. But you set the intention. Absolutely. I love that.
Thank you. Sandy, how do you think we can continue to erase mental health stigma?
I say this every time, and I could scream it from the top of a mountain at this point. Tell the stories. The more that we tell the stories of just people living their lives with mental illness, the better we're going to be able to erase the stigma, because as has been brought up before, what we keep hearing on the news is just this over sensationalized, somebody did something horrible or something horrible happened, or this person has a devastating life and we need to feel bad for them. No, don't feel bad for them. Don't feel bad for us, and don't repeat all the sensationalized messages. Those don't help. They don't bring any truth to the situation. What is real is just people living their lives. So if you have you are somebody who's living with mental illness, one of the best things you can do, if you are in a safe space to come out and say it, tell your story. I'm doing that. I'm a very new person in my career, and I'm still doing that despite I know there could be some discrimination that could happen, but I'm still going to say it. And also just listen to the stories of people who tell their story. Don't try to tell them how they feel, just listen and hear them out, because storytelling is going to be the best tool that we have in our toolbox to be able to deal with this, because that's the way you get to know what living with mental illness is really like. Mm-hmm. And then once we know what it's really like, then we can start thinking about the tools that we can use to bring more change with this. The stigma-free zone is definitely a really great way of erasing stigma, because that presents a place where people can be, where people feel open enough to be able to say their truth. And also people feel like they're in a place where they have to intentionally listen. So I think that between stigma-free zones and telling our stories, those are the best steps we could possibly do at this moment.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. Caroline, Me Too represents a shift toward focusing more on the possibilities of living with mental illness and having a good, productive life. Is this one of the key messages you hope people can take away from Me Too and from the film?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Barbara and Margie spoke about this from the very beginning with this project, that they didn't want to sort of gloss over the realities that things can be very difficult, that we encounter a lot of challenges with our mental health. You saw in the film with Dylan, with Merrick, that, it's not always pretty. But you did also see, as Margie said, kind of a cyclical nature to it. So we felt that was really important, but I also have this very strong feeling that we never tell the good stories about people living well with mental illness. I think, that's not to gloss over the hardships, but it's to say that people do very kind of normal things, and in fact, some pretty extraordinary things while they're living with bipolar disorder, dissociative disorders, addiction. So if we can be one of the sources of those good stories, then that's something I'm proud of.
Absolutely. And the good stories are usually the predominant stories in terms of how much time people spend in their lives in the cycles. So that's really, really important. Thank you so much. We're going to open up to the audience now for a few minutes. We'll take a few questions. You can't, unfortunately, see the audience, but they are a lovely bunch that look very warm because it is a little cold and windy and snowy outside. We do have a microphone, though, that will go around, so you will be able to hear them. We thought that would be a little more, a little clearer for you guys rather than me repeating the questions. So do we have any questions from anyone for our folks from the East? I've been to Burlington, Vermont, by the way. It's absolutely beautiful.
And also very cold.
Yeah. Do we have any questions? Oh, we have one over on this side. We'll get the microphone because the microphone is streaming through to the Zoom.
Right.
Hi, my name's Adina. It's actually more of a comment than a question. Can you hear me? All of you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very moved by the film. First of all, I thought it was so well done, and all the themes that you're talking about really came through loud and clear. And thank you for making it and distributing it. I guess I'm aware about the sort of the therapeutic value of people coming together in a stigma-free zone and having a sense of belonging and feeling that people share some of their life experiences, and that was really well captured. But it's interesting that the vehicle was music, because we also know that music has so many healing and therapeutic properties that I guess you had said, Carolyn, they could have been sports, it could have been dance, it could have been anything else, but there's something particular about it being music connected to mental health and kind of inclusiveness. And I know that, Ronald, your background is music and conducting, but I don't know if you can just talk more about the connection of the music and the mental health and the sense of connection and belonging that was therapeutic for everyone.
So, I mean, we can open it up to any of you who'd like to take a turn at that.
Caroline.
I always struggle with this question, and somebody else may have something more articulate. I mean, I think I always say, Ronald and I studied music, and we have been in therapy a lot, but we're not therapists, we're not physicians, and we're not scientists, but there are, as you say, a lot of people who know an awful lot that is scientifically backed in terms of the impact of music on health. We're not music therapists, but we do believe in music as a form of therapy. And I hope that one of these days we're going to get a team that will actually study what we're doing and maybe put a little more science behind the Me Too experience. So I'll just offer that as a thought.
Go ahead.
I have something to add to that. If you're interested in learning more about like the science of music and the brain and why it helps, This Is Your Brain on Music is an incredibly good book on the topic. I highly recommend it. It was kind of a beach read for me, but I do a lot of scientific reading. I do know I am starting to study a little bit of neuroscience, so I don't really know that much, so I can't really contribute a huge amount as to how music really contributes to the brain beyond what is found in that book, because most of my studies have so far been on the molecular basis for brain, so genetics, not so much music. But yeah, I would definitely recommend reading This Is Your Brain on Music to kind of get a little bit of a background on the topic. And I know that there are some really good papers that have come out since then. If you can't get a hold of the papers, if you have a chance, just email the PIs of the labs that those papers have come out from. So find the last name of the paper, email that person, And usually that person will send you a PDF of that paper for free because they do want their research out in the world to be read. So definitely try to get a hold of those papers, read them, and definitely read the book, because the book makes it a little more digestible. The papers are going to be a little bit more difficult.
Thank you, Sandy. I think it was either Barbara or Margie wanted to jump in there.
Well, actually, I was going to say the same thing. I was going to recommend the same book, which is really a good overview of how the brain and music interact. And so we're on the same wavelength.
Okay. Yeah, we have another question here.
It's also a little bit of a comment. I was also very inspired by the film. I am a music therapist. So another book I can recommend to you is Musicophilia.
Oh, yeah.
Have you read that book?
No.
You would all.
It's great.
Yeah,
you wouldn't go to sleep. You would.
I saw 2 thumbs up from Sandy, so I'm sure she's familiar with it.
I have to write that down.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. But I also was wondering, like, I don't know, in terms of funding and your financial struggles, like if you've ever thought of consulting with a music therapist or working with a music therapist in some capacity, and even how you got the 2 orchestras together. I realize I'm sort of asking 2 questions, but how you got the 2 orchestras together, and like how you worked with 2 orchestras in 2 different places.
Let's have coffee sometime. That was a lot to unpack there. Oh, the stories we could tell. I will say that we've had music therapists in the orchestras, the various orchestras at this point, but not really using their training necessarily, just on their instruments and maybe doing some storytelling, which is always nice. But I think, you know, I have so much respect for what music therapists do, and we're not, you know, we're just not trained that way. We're a group of amateurs that meet once a week, and we'll leave the strict music therapy to the people that really know how to do that. And I'll add, it's a huge challenge to bring 2 orchestras or 3 orchestras, as we recently did at Boston Symphony Hall, together on a stage to play music together. It's challenging just from a very technical level. And then when you start trying to take into account different personalities and travel and the various instruments and all, it's a delightful challenge. Not one that I want to do every year.
I will add that we just did a presentation for the Association of Musical Therapists for their conference, their yearly conference, which was really wonderful. And we really enjoyed speaking to an audience of people who every day use music as a therapeutic construct. So that was very cool.
Yeah, the way we brought that together was I spent a lot of time every week. I think I went from Boston to Burlington, to Boston, to Burlington, to work and teach them the music in the same tempo and the same way. So when we put them together, it kind of clicked. That's the magic.
Yeah,
but you really didn't get to put them together till the day before, right?
The day before.
It really was. It really was amazing, Ronald, what you were able to achieve, considering they had so little time together.
Yeah, just one.
Yeah, 1 day.
One big day, yeah. Plus 40.
Maybe 100 hours going up and down and up and down and up and down, and up and down and up and down.
Okay.
And then Manchester, and then Manchester, and then Boston.
We have a question up on this side of the room here. Right on the end. There we go. We have Cheryl running around like Donahue, for those who remember.
Thank you, Cheryl.
That's an old one.
I love this. I love this film. It was really amazing to me. And your faces, I have to tell you, are so calming to me right now. You know, it's so nice to see you. And so it feels like you're actually here, you know. And one, I really loved this film. It was so beautiful. What I really loved is that young girl who was conducting, and you showed her that she could do this, and that moment must be so special. We should all have moments like that when we know we're reaching, and I guess all that you really are reaching and changing lives, and that really is amazing. The other thing is that the girl who played the reed instrument, like I was on, like I have to listen to music, it just calms me down. I have to listen almost every day to be normal or to be happy. And one of the things I lucked into last year was Kululam. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just amazing. All these happy people singing, thousands, 10,000 people. And in one of the videos, the first one that I lucked into was a blessing over everything, a blessing over the honey, a blessing over the bitter, over the sweet, over the bee sting. There was a girl there, and I kept looking at her eyes, and she looks like, I know this may not, she looked like Corey, the one who went away for.
Oh, yeah.
And I looked at her eyes, and I was like, I wonder, she's struggling so much to be in this orchestra. And I wonder, is that the same woman by any chance? Did she go and do Kululam? No.
I don't think so. Yeah. She's in New Hampshire.
Yeah. But she, her eyes, and I was just thinking, one never knows what somebody else is going through. And we don't even know, on our own lives, how, why we're going through whatever hell or whatever heaven we're going through, but music is going to make it better, and I know this, so I have you too. And I'm just lucked into many videos, and I think sometimes that some of the things I can put something on right away, and I can feel better, and put music on right away, and I don't need to know why, but I just know it's whatever brain thing is, it is such a gift, and this film, what you're doing with your lives is incredible. But
thank you
so much for what you're doing for other people and for yourselves. And may you all have good health, and kindness, no matter what.
Yeah, I think that moment with the young girl, that was so organic, and it just seemed so intuitive for you, Ronald, to just come and try it, Yeah. We have a question down here, and then we'll turn it back for a couple more questions to our panel.
Hi, my name is Harold, and I just have a comment and then a quick question. I think what you're doing is fantastic. I think it's, for those of us who have been involved in music, it's almost instinctual that this would work. Most people, when they're having a bad day, they go and they put their headset on and they just listen to music, whether it's rock and roll, whether it's classical. Music does that. By the same token, I want to know, when you started doing the orchestra, how hard was it to get people who have been so insular because of their illness that they don't want to interact? How difficult was it to get people to start opening up a little bit?
By being open.
Yeah, boy, that's by being open ourselves. Yeah, that's a simple way of putting it. Harold, I remember, we've had rehearsals, especially early on, but before we had kind of a reputation as being a safe and supportive place. There were people that I would literally meet in the parking lot to kind of convince them to come in. I mean, you're right, absolutely, in saying I'll bet people had trouble getting through the door. And we do still have some people that struggle with that. And Ronald, as he said, he's so open. And now we've cultivated this room full of people like Sandy who are so open and warm and accepting that it gets easier for people. But usually the toughest part for some people anyway is getting through the door that first time.
Yeah, but as it's grown, kind of snowball, and more people hear about it, and they know that it is a space that's very safe. So like at the beginning, we only had 7 people. So those were the warriors. They were the really brave people, really brave, because they were really coming out by showing up at the orchestra. And they didn't know if it was really safe or what, but they talked a lot. We shared a lot for the first several rehearsals, and start to trust each other, and that trust sort of made everyone coming in feel that trust and feel that it was a good space to be in.
My thoughts are going now to, I mean, how do people find you besides, you have a film, you have a website? If someone was interested in saying, you know, I play the cello, I play the flute, I play a certain instrument, and I think that could be something for me, how do they even make that first step?
That's the easy part. They just send me an email.
Okay.
By and large, even though we're operating now in 3 different states, usually the first contact is with me personally, and it's an email to info@metoomusic.org. And I get, you know, the privilege of receiving these beautiful messages from people saying, you know, my name is, I play the bassoon and I haven't played it since high school, but I love what you're doing. And very often I get, you know, a pretty complete mental health picture in an email too, because people want to, once they know they're in a stigma-free zone, they want to be able to share. And so I'm the lucky one who gets to see still most of those messages for the very first time. But we recruit from in a lot of different ways. Sandy, I think you read about Me Too for the first time in a poster at the Brattle Theater or something, or in some place.
It was, I heard about it from someone in a day program I was part of for a short time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like people hear about it, you know, both through music circles, through therapeutic circles. We've actually had some psychologists and some social workers who have prescribed participation, or at least strongly suggested participation. And a lot of it's just word of mouth, social media, you know, any chance we get to talk about it, we try to spread the word.
And I know that I have left so many posters at the Battle Theater and the Coolidge Theater, and I have spread the word to like people who I know have played music but have been out of it for a while. I have been kind of I've been very loud about it in general.
We appreciate it
for me, and I think that there's a lot of people in my life who I know could benefit from it, or people even I don't know, and that's hence my dropping posters everywhere.
Yep.
That's great. That's great.
Well, maybe someone will want to start a Me Too Winnipeg.
Hey,
wouldn't that be fun?
We have a pretty good symphony and philharmonic, so it's possible. We have quite a great musical community here in Winnipeg.
They should get in touch with Caroline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drop me a line.
Ronald, let's turn one last question to you, and then to Margie and Barbara. So Me Too is celebrating its 11th anniversary. How does that make you feel? And what do you still hope to accomplish?
Makes me feel great. Main thing is we're opening a chorus in Boston in the next several months. So that's my view for the future. Chorus, everyone can sing. So, period.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. Margie and Barbara, what do you hope people are going to take away from this film?
Well, I hope we'll have discussions just like we're having now. I hope it will open that conversation and make people feel a little bit more comfortable talking about it. As Sandy said, sharing stories makes such a big difference. And so we hope that that's what people will start doing.
I guess, you know, I hope that we can be a little voice, a little push against this incredible amount of negative and false media attention that the words mental illness get, and that people will, you know, stop kind of seeing other people as others, or as this experience as it's a human experience. There's nowhere in the world that isn't affected by people with mental illness. And, anywhere that we can push this message across and help seed some new Me Too ensembles across the country, that makes me, and I know Margie too, very happy and very proud.
Fantastic. So any last words from anyone before we wind things down at our end here?
If anybody wants to get in touch with us or has any other questions or possibly want to screen the film other places, you can get us at orchestratingdoc@gmail.com, and you'll come directly to Margie and to me.
It's orchestrating doc as a documentary,
yes.
at gmail.com.
Yeah. And Caroline, you should say the info at me2music.org, and it's ME2.
Yeah, so we will have information out in the foyer. Right. I wish you guys were here because we're going to have some lovely refreshments afterwards.
No.
And we'll
we
get a
do
chance
too.
to mingle and to socialize a little bit. So I really want to thank you all for all of your hard work, because it clearly is hard work, for sticking with those cycles and sticking with so many people, for creating such a wonderful, safe space, for sharing the beauty of music with the world in such a unique, productive, destigmatizing way. And keep up the good work. You should only continue to have success. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting us. It was really an honor.
Yeah, thank you.
And we have some folks to thank here. Several of the staff here at Jewish Child and Family Service who did all the heavy lifting. I just got to show up today and meet you and ask the questions. So they did a lot of the heavy lifting. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming out tonight. JCFS is always here to help. We're here to be a safe space. We're here to be a voice. We're here to be a support for anyone living with mental health differences and mental illness. And thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. So they're all waving. They're waving at the big
We're waving back.
So thank you all so much. I know it's late for most of you. It's an hour later than here. So have a wonderful night, and thank you again.
Good night.
Good night. So thank you, everyone. We do have refreshments outside. We can stay and mingle for a little while. If we do have, some of our staff are floating around. If you have any other questions, if you want to learn more about JCFS, and we do have some of the posters that have all the information that they were talking about. I feel like this is a concert and I'm on the big screen here. So thank you for coming out, and have a wonderful evening.